Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's first video. So do USA forecast for today's first video. As always on a Wednesday, we're going to have a look and see what's happening across the United States for the next week, 10 days. And we'll have a look at CFSV2 for the next 4 weeks as well. That will take us into the beginning of 2021. And I'll get on with your USA forecast very, very shortly. Just say that we've got a Christmas update penciled in for today. 17th Christmas update. I think we're going to release that after the live stream. That we're going to be doing at 6 o'clock. So we'll do a live stream at 6. Basically, we'll live stream our 10 to 14 day update for the UK and for Northern Europe as well. And then I think we'll release the 17th Christmas update after that. So, this old deck gas weather is today, but kicking it all off is the USA forecast. Let's have a look then at the 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts at Penn State University for the next week to 10 days. So you know with these that blue is extrapolating to below average heights, which is low pressure. Yellow, orange and red extrapolate to above average heights, which is high pressure. So these are for like the 7 to 10 day time frame, which takes us to around the 19th of December, moving up towards, but not yet at, the Christmas period. Excuse me. So we can see that we've got an area of below average heights coming in from the Pacific, from the northwest, down into the central part of the states, with a jet stream doing something a little bit like that, and then probably rising northwards up the east side of it. There is not any particularly evident ridge. I suspect that the jet stream would be doing something a little bit like that. So it could be bringing colder air into the north and the northwest, but actually like the midwest and the east could be relatively mild. And moving up into Canada, we've got a very deep trough of low pressure up there. That's like the polar vortex, or part of the polar vortex anyway, up over Canada. So it will be very cold over Canada, but that's kept at bay, that's held at bay, probably just in the 7 to 10 day time frame anyway. So that's the ECM, by the way. The GFS over here is very similar. So again, we've got the trough of low pressure coming down into the west and the northwest. Probably then the jet stream rises northwards like that. This is very cold air that will be sitting over Canada in the 7 to 10 day time frame. I think the question for the US, particularly northern and sort of central and eastern parts of the US and the Midwest, is whether this very cold air that's over Canada will be able to force its way southwards. Will that force its way southwards into like the Midwest and the east and the northeast of the states for Christmas? Can't yet answer that question, but you know, it's a possibility that there could be some extremely cold weather coming up for northern eastern parts of the states around or possibly into the Christmas period. But for the time being, for like the next week, probably that very cold air is going to be held at bay and it will stay relatively mild. So these are the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. Looking at Columbus in Ohio, Jen. I think this sums things up quite nicely. So red line is a 30-year upper air temperature average for Columbus, Ohio. And for like the next week anyway, it does look pretty mild. Above average temperatures going up towards the middle part of December. Now around the middle of December, there is a slightly colder snap coming up then. But after that, moving up towards the Christmas period, generally it's just relatively mild once again. So this is a pretty mild week or two coming up. And right at the very end, there are some really cold outliers beginning to appear for Columbus. But overall, it looks like the GFS ensembles want to keep things pretty mild going up to Christmas. As far as we get to with the GFS operational runs today, and its ensemble is up to Christmas Day, actually. So, quite interesting. If you have a look at the extended, the GFS extended, which takes us into, early January, then perhaps we do see signs of a little bit more colder weather coming up then. But, of course, that is a very, very long way out. So let's just very quickly go back to the shorter range upper air temperature and precipitation ensemble. So precipitation wise, going to be a lot of dry weather through the next few days. So there will be plenty of dry weather until around the middle of next week. Then it goes more unsettled as we bring an area of low pressure through and turn things colder briefly. And then as we move out like towards the Christmas period, this period here, so not only does it turn mild, it does also turn more unsettled as well, potentially. Right, so temperature anomalies from the 9th to the 17th of December looking mild or very mild across most parts of the states, particularly through the Midwest and up into the north. It is a little bit colder out to the northwest, which you would expect with trough low pressure and a bit of a dip in the jet stream into the northwest. But really, that is a very mild looking week through most parts of the United States. Precipitation anomalies from the 9th to 17th of December, varying from state to state, but generally mild on average through most southern and dry on average, I should say, through most southern and eastern states. Around the Midwest, around the Great Lakes, it's a little bit more unsettled through there, but I think it's more towards the west and the northwest where it looks generally rather more unsettled. The southwest, like California, looks drier there, but going up the west coast and then into these northwestern states, I think it does look a little bit more unsettled through there, and that's where there could be some snow, I think, as it will be a bit colder through there. Right, okay, so let's have a look at the GFS. So we're going to pull this out a little bit. So this is how the GFS is currently looking for today. It is a mild scene across most parts of the states. There's a little bit of colder air into extreme northeast, nothing abnormal, but a little bit of colder air coming into extreme northwest. But otherwise, most parts of the states are actually very mild today. Look at those upper air temperatures, really, really mild upper air temperatures have pushed their way up from the south, away from this extreme northeastern corner anyway, where it is a little bit colder through there, but probably still milder than average. I mean, it should be cold in the northeastern part of the states at this time of the year. Of course it should. So probably compared to average, it's still a little bit milder than average up there, but that's where, like you said, it's coldest. Most parts of the states are actually looking very mild with those upper air temperatures. Over the next few days, we're going to keep things pretty mild, really. So there will be areas of low pressure pushing through from west to east. And on the northern side of these low pressure, there will be some cold air that manages to seep down from Canada. This is quite a significant area of low pressure around the Great Lakes, for example, on Sunday. That will bring heavy rain on its southern and eastern side. And on the northern side and western side, probably bring some snow as colder air pushes in from Canada. I mean, these are upper air temperatures for Sunday. So obviously, it's colder in the north than it is right now. But then you would expect it to be so. And compared to average, it's probably still a little bit milder than average, really. But there could be some snow across these northern and midwestern states as we go through into the weekend or later on the weekend. Conversely, out the eastern side into the northeast, it's relatively mild through there. Out in the west, it looks pretty mild as well. You notice the very cold upper air temperatures are beginning to intensify over Canada. Through into next week, so again, we keep things generally pretty mild through most parts of the states. The north, again, is prone to getting some colder air pushing in from Canada. There's our upper air temperatures through the middle of next week, showing that, again, quite widely across the states. Does look pretty mild. It's also very cold. Look at those upper air temperatures across Canada. So just to the north of the Canadian border, there really is extremely cold air that is lurking and wanting to push southwards, but for the time being, that is being mostly held at bay. A little bit does seep into some of these extreme northern states, but really that cold air is being held at bay up to the middle of next week. Will it eventually manage to force its way southwards? Let's see what happens. So as we run on up towards day 10, again, it's a messy picture, but overall, most parts of the states are keeping the coldest of that air at bay. That's how we look as we get to day 10, which is Saturday the 19th of December. There's quite a deep area of low pressure on the east side of the states. Again, on the northern and western side of these low pressures, we could pull enough cold air in from Canada to provide some snow. But the coldest, the brutal cold, the coldest of the air, still being held at bay over Canada around day 10. As we move on into the extended range with this GFS run, look what happens. Eventually, we get to Christmas. So as far as we go for GFS midnight run, we get to Christmas, and now a significant area of low pressure has pushed across the north of the states, and in its wake, this low pressure acts as the trigger to start to allow some very cold air to begin to push, down from Canada. So eventually we do get there, and we do introduce some brutal cold from Canada, and it happens like Christmas Eve to Christmas Day. Excuse me, across these northern and eastern states. Look at those upper air temperatures showing those extreme cold temperatures plunging southwards through the Midwest. Eventually that very cold air that's sitting over Canada through much of the period does force its way south into the Midwest. Still mild up the eastern seaboard on Christmas Day, or to start Christmas Day, but this very cold air would be pushing southwards and eastwards into those eastern parts of the states as we go through Christmas Day. So what an interesting Christmas Day that will be. Conversely, Christmas Day in the west is relatively mild, actually, across those western parts of the states. But under high pressure could be like cold from frost and fog. But the proper sort of brutal cold from Canada, that is in the Midwest and pushing eastwards on Christmas Day. So we'd have heavy rain, a very heavy band of rain moving eastwards into the eastern side. And then severe cold and blizzards following along behind. And a very, very interesting Christmas Day that would be. Let's have a look at the ECM then, see what that's showing. So again, at the moment, most parts of the state's looking pretty mild, really, and as we go through into the weekend, very little change, just a little bit of colder air digging southwards into some of those northern and midwestern states through the weekend via this area of low pressure. That takes rain eastwards, and then behind that you put a little bit of cold air southwards from Canada into next week, again largely keeping the coldest of the air at bay. That's how the upper air temperatures are looking through the early part of next week. Generally quite mild, very cold going further north into Canada, that being kept at bay up to like the early part of next week, with most parts of the states bathed in those mild upper air temperatures. Goes a little bit colder through the middle part of next week in these northern and northeastern states. Again, nothing more than you would expect really at the time of the year, but some slightly colder air does begin to seep down from Canada in some of those midwestern and northeast states. At the same time, out in the west, it does look generally milder through there. And then we move on up towards day 10. We start to pull up a very mild southerly wind through the Midwest and into the east as we get to day 10. As you have a ridge of high pressure on the eastern seaboard, that pulls up a very mild push of southerly winds from like the Gulf of Mexico. There is a deep area of low pressure that's beginning to develop further out into the far north and northwest, though. And so that might act as a trigger, similar to what the GFS midnight run shows. That could act as a trigger. This low just here, I'll highlight it. This low just here might act as a trigger if it develops and pushes in that direction to allow this very cold air that's over Canada to begin to push southwards. It's possible it might do, but of course, as far as we go with the ECM, with the Euro, is to day 10. So we can't say where it goes beyond that. Let's have a look at the CFS V2 then. So these are 500 millibar heights broken down into week periods. The first week period will take us from the 8th to the 14th of December. The coming week has the ridge out in the northwest. So generally most parts of the states look quite mild in the weekend. There is like a trough that's in the southeastern part of the states. Week 2 is going to be the 15th to the 21st. Oops, can't highlight that. Let's do that again then. 15th, 21st of December. So colder in the north, but milder like off the eastern side with this ridge of high pressure that will pull up like a southerly flow to many sort of midwestern and eastern states. Week 3 looks like that. It's the 22nd, 28th of December, so the ridge is over in the east, the trough is out in the west. The flow of jets doing something a little bit like that. So it implies that many sort of midwestern and eastern states are probably relatively mild. And this goes on into week 4 as well, 29th of December to 4th of January. Keeps it mild really with high pressure to the east, low pressure out to the northwest. So the coldest air is probably digging into the northwest, and most parts of the states looking pretty mild, I would have thought. Temperature anomalies for week 1 from the 8th to the 14th of December, mostly mild In many parts of the states, it's a little bit cooler down across these southern states, but most parts of America looking mild, very mild into week 2, 15th, 21st of December. It's a very mild week. Notice how cold it is, though, like across central northern parts of Canada. So the cold is there, but not able to force its way southwards. Week 3 is Christmas week. It's the 27th, 28th of December. Again, look how mild it is across most parts of the states in week 3. It's cold in the northwest. Just coming to the far northwest and up towards Alaska. Very cold there. Most parts of the states are mild into week 3. And week 4, which is the 29th of December to 4th of January, keeps it mild again away from the west and from the northwest. So the CFS does not want to allow any of this brutal cold to move out of Canada into America at this stage. That could change, though, of course. Precipitation-wise, finally, so most parts of the states are looking pretty dry in week 1. Week 2, which is 15th, 21st December, so wetter in the northwest. So that could be snow as cold air digging in from Alaska through there. However, most parts of the states looking average to a bit drier than average in week 2. Week 3 goes wetter, so this is the 22nd, 28th of December going wetter through week 3. There could be some snow involved in that, but given that the temperature anomaly is so far above average, there's going to be like a mix of rain and or snow with that probably. And then week 4 is the 29th of December to 4th of January. And yeah, so wetter in the west and in the southeast, near normal, but losing the signal, of course, the further out we go, the weaker the signal gets. So it looks relatively mild for the states, like for the next, for the next week or two. It looks like things are relatively mild running up towards Christmas. But there will be colder interludes, colder incursions, of course, as you'd expect at this time of year, but no more than you would expect, and probably in with a cold incursion, not as cold as it would typically be so. I think the focus is on that very cold air that's sitting over Canada. Will that manage to force its way southwards into northern and eastern America? The GFS Midnight Run is doing it on Christmas Day, forcing that brutal cold southwards into the Midwest, and eventually would spread to the east, like Christmas Day. But of course, that is a very long way out. It's over 2 weeks away, and for the time being, mild weather is set to continue for much of the states, but with a possibility. Always as that very cold air lurks over Canada, with the possibility that that might start to spill southwards if we get a deep area of low pressure that can act as the trigger to pull that south from Canada into the Midwest and then on into the east. So yeah, that's how it's looking at the moment. We'll know more about Christmas next week. We'll do USA broadcast next Wednesday. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. These are YouTube exclusives, so you will need to be subbed to the channel to be able to see these every Wednesday. And yeah, we shall be back with another USA forecast next Wednesday, and we'll have a better idea then, I think, about what's happening in the States over Christmas. That's all for now, though, and thanks for watching.